Okay, welcome everyone to the New School for Social Research and Information session. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening as the winter weather starts to come upon us. And I also want to make a special welcome to our Facebook Live audience joining us from perhaps around the world. We're here to talk about the programs of the New School for Social Research. I'd just like to give you a little bit of information about the history of the New School and about the New School for Social Research before we start. The New School was founded in 1919. You could say it was founded in protest by a group of professors from Columbia University who resigned from that institution in protest to the fact that one of their colleagues had been fired for opposing the United States involvement in the First World War. These professors came down to Greenwich Village to start a new institution, a place where new educational ideas, new theories of all sorts could be discussed, tried out, spoken of, and imparted to a broad public. Actually, they started with just teaching courses to people who basically had not had a chance to go to college during their normal college age. With open seminars and public lectures of all sorts. The New School for Social Research was founded later by the president of the New School, Alvin Johnson, who in 1933 brought over a group of 10 scholars from Germany. These are people who were fired from their jobs as soon as Hitler came to power with the new racial laws which prevented Jews and others from holding government positions, which included professorships. And he brought 10 of the most eminent social scientists from Germany over here to found a graduate faculty of political and social science. Originally, it was called the University in Exile, and the next year it changed its name to the Graduate Faculty of Political and Social Science. Since 2005, it has been called the New School for Social Research. It was, as I say, the first degree-granting division of the university and the second part of the university to be founded. Today, the New School comprises these various colleges: the Parsons School of Design, a Parsons Paris division, the New School for Social Research, of course, the four schools of social public engagement: Milano, creative writing, media studies, and the School of Languages, and also a College of Performing Arts, which includes the Mannes College of Classical Music, a jazz and contemporary music program, and also a drama school, a School of Drama. Besides the graduate programs that the New School currently has, they are also having undergraduate programs, the Eugene Lang College of Liberal Arts, the bachelor's program for adult and transfer students, that's for older students who are coming back to school, the Open Campus, which is the continuing education division of the university, and the BFA program at the College of Performing Arts. Graduate students of the New School are encouraged to think critically, to challenge the status quo, to ask the hard questions, to develop their scholarship and research skills on a very high level, be global in scope, and apply real-world solutions to the current problems, and to basically for themselves to unlock their passions and their ambitions. And this is really what drives the other goals. We are a very international institution. In fact, we have the greatest number of international students, or greatest proportion of international students of any university in the country. Scholars, students, and researchers from 116 different countries. 30 to 40% of our students are international, and our alumni also are found in locations across the globe. So, the careers that the New School graduates go on to are various. Obviously, some of them go on to academic jobs as scholars. Many are activists. Some go into government, United Nations and NGO officials. and also executives in business and industry. So a New School degree can take you anywhere you want to go. So I just want to introduce tonight's panel. We'll be giving you some more information, some really substantive information about the New School for Social Research particularly. First of all, I want to welcome Professor Jay Bernstein, the Distinguished Professor of Philosophy, and our graduate students, Mariana Garcia Arias, whose name did not come out right for some reason in PowerPoint. She is a PhD student in anthropology. Mina Yildirim, our PhD student in politics. Clinton Merck, a PhD student in psychology. And Zoe Carey, a PhD student in sociology. And we're going to run this by, I'm going to pose a number of questions to the panel, and I'm going to let each one of them respond to them. And that's what that's how we run our evening to begin with. And later on, you can ask questions of any of our panelists. So everyone, could you please go down the row and introduce yourselves and just say a few words about your department? Starting with Professor Bernstein, perhaps.
So welcome, I'm Jay Bernstein from Philosophy Department. So the Philosophy Department of the New School is called a pluralist department, and pluralism is really code for we do more than analytic philosophy. We are a department that does continental and European philosophy, the history of philosophy. Nearly every member of the department is involved in teaching some aspects of ethics and political philosophy, and with a specialization, I guess, in critical theory. We probably have more people, I think over half of the department has written on topics in aesthetics and the philosophy of art, which is very unusual. And of course, we do a whole range of traditional topics in philosophy of mind and philosophy of language. The distinctive character of the department is that it has that historical spine, and everybody teaches some bits of the history of philosophy, and then we try to address contemporary issues through that historical lens. The fact that we were founded by refugees from Germany, Hannah Arendt most notably, Hans Jonas, Aaron Gervich, who brought phenomenology to America, Rainer Sherman, who was the first really Heideggerian to teach in America. Their stamp is on the department. That we have a yearly conference called the Arendt-Sherman Symposium. And I used to always feel in the old building that Arendt's ghost was walking the halls and watching everything I did. So all of that, we are probably the only department in the country which tries to marry modern European philosophy with political philosophy. That I'm sure everyone will say something about this. This is an unapologetically left-wing place. We are interested in progressive ideas, and therefore the problems of the present haunt all of us. I think that's a starting place.
Do you want to say something about your own research, though, too?
Sure. I've written books on critical theory. I've written books on Habermas and Adorno. I've written 3 books on aesthetics, on the philosophy of novel, on Adorno and art and painting. But the world has changed. And the event that transformed me was Abu Ghraib. I thought it was the most appalling event that our government had partaken of. And as a consequence, I published a book 2 years ago on torture and human dignity, thinking about the role of torture in the foundation of the modern state. And I'm now, again, really because of the way of the world. This is not what I had thought I would be thinking about, but it seems to me we're living through a moment where the claims of universality, that all lives are of equal worth, are being given up. And therefore, my question for my new project is, can there be a progressive left-wing account of human rights? I think human rights has been part of a liberal agenda, and it seems to me the left has not responded to it with enough energy. And my own view is the left does not have a political project at the moment that is powerful. And my question, it's just a question, is could human rights be the beginning or the center of an international left-wing politics? Interestingly, my old and dear friend Etienne Balibar, who of course worked with Althusser, has been thinking about this for a couple of decades now. So it seems to me that there are possibilities here that need urgent investigation, where suddenly urgency is part of what philosophy has to respond to.
Thank you. Mariana, would you like to say something about yourself and your anthropology department?
Yes, I'm Mariana. I'm an international PhD student in the Anthropology Department. I'm on my third year in the program, which means that I'm right now writing my qualifying exams and also applying for research grants. Do you want me to talk about my research? Okay, my research, very, very broadly, is about the politics of air pollution in Mexico City. I'm interested in how air quality has shaped the city in very particular ways, and also how air quality has shaped the imagined future of the city as well as its inhabitants. So I'm looking also on how air pollution produces different things in the city. By things, I'm talking about people, I'm talking about ideas, I'm talking about how it creates uneven geographies of inequality in the city, who not everyone breathes the same thing, and why. And of course, I'm also interested in the techno-scientific objects being created to remediate the problem, and what do they produce. And yeah, I'm working, my sites are very diverse at this moment. I'm working with environmental activists. I'm working with policymakers, of course. I'm also working in hospitals, particularly in respiratory clinic, disease clinics. And I'm also working with scientists in research centers. And I guess that is it about my project, and about the Anthropology Department. It's the research being done there. It's very wide, as well as faculty members' geographical expertise. But I would say that right now, currently, the focus that that faculty members and that students are also having is towards the areas of medical and legal anthropology, also science and technology studies, economic anthropology, of course, human on human relations, post-colonial theory. And yeah, I mean, it's a department that encourages a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration. We are encouraged to, as students, we're encouraged to take classes in different departments and also to collaborate in the different research centers that the university has, like GUIDEST, which is a graduate institute of design, ethnography, and social thought. I also mentioned that one important area in the anthropology department is anthropology of borders and migration. So we also collaborate a lot with the Solberg Institute for Migration and, of course, the Janey Institute of Latin American Studies. I mean, I can answer particular individual questions if you want to go more in depth.
I think you want to add also that the department is only social anthropology. It's not.
Oh yeah, that's very important because I have received emails that asking me about archaeology.
Right.
Yeah, this department focuses on social anthropology, and also a lot of questions that I receive is that if this program accepts external PhD students, this is one of the few departments that doesn't accept external PhD students. You will have to apply first to the MA, course the master's, and then reapply to the PhD program.
Okay. Okay. Clint, you want to talk about psychology?
Yep, so I'm Clint. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Psychology Department. Like the Anthropology Department, the Psychology Department does not accept students directly into the PhD. All students have to complete at least some of the MA. Students with a previous MA can apply for advanced standing, and then they have to complete 12 of the 30 credits at the MA level, and they still have to apply separately for the PhD after completing the MA. So while the MA is like a general MA program in psychology, the program is really split into two groups. There's the clinical students, the clinical psychology faculty and students, and then there's what we call the CSD faculty and students. CSD stands for Cognitive, Social, and Developmental, which, as you can imagine, that's what the faculty focus on in that section, and those are the experimental psychologists, those that are not doing any clinical work whatsoever, although there is overlap between the two groups. Other things about the program itself, I suppose that's enough for now because we have other questions coming up. But for my research kind of is all over the place, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure. But I study the link between remembering the past and imagining the future. That's my main focus, two processes that are actually more related than you might think, based on the idea that memory is very inaccurate. We view memory as a reconstructive process where we take what we actually do know, which is somewhat limited, and reconstruct something using that information that we do know and kind of adding things in along the way, making some kind of reasonable story as we recall. So based on memory being a reconstructive process, we can see imagination as a constructive process using what we know to create something novel, very similar to memory. And a lot of research has supported this idea that the processes are linked. So I've been looking at how we remember the past and how that influences how we think about the future of the world's climate. So we've already been talking about how at the New School you end up getting wrapped up in these larger ideas, which was great for me because I was thinking about that when I came here. So I've looked at not only how the way we remember the past influences how we imagine the future, but how we forget and what we forget and how that influences the future. So I actually induce forgetting in people for information that they study about the climate and then see how they imagine the future. That's led me to look at adaptive functions of forgetting. It's also led me to look at the way that we think of trends in the past and whether we continue those trends into the future or not. My research has also started to look at intergenerational transmission of memory and perceptions of wealth inequality, another major issue, pressing issue in this country right now. The data are actually really shocking in that area. And then because all of that research is so pessimistic, I'm also looking at flashbulb memories for positive events. So flashbulb memories are memories for major public events, and my advisor did a large longitudinal study on memory for 9/11. So he has a 10-year collection of data starting within the week after 9/11 to 10 years after, looking at how people remember that event, and kind of showing that people tend to be very confident in these flashbulb memories, thinking they know exactly where they were and what they were doing. And while people do remember this information, they're not as accurate as they think. Confidence tends to outweigh consistency in these memories. So I've been looking at these types of memories for positive public events like sporting events and things like that. And another lab mate of mine is looking at, he collected data on the election results announcement this past year, which turned out to be like not what he expected. So he has he's kind of had to adapt his data collection for that. But maybe more of a true flashbulb memory for some, I don't know. And yeah, that pretty much sums up my research.
Thank you very much. Mina, could you please tell us about the politics department and about your research?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Mine. I'm from politics department. This is my 7th year in the NSSR, and in the department I'm writing. I'm a PhD candidate, which means that I'm, thank God, done with the coursework, exams, dissertation proposal, and hopefully writing the dissertation with an aim to submit and defend it by the end of the next academic year. So I came to New School as having done and completed my master's degree in political theory back in Turkey, in Istanbul. In my MA, I have studied like Heideggerian critiques of like understanding of subjectivity as it is related to the questions of identity politics, like kind of underlying notions of subjectivity in prevalent understanding and like application manifestations of identity in identity politics, which was a rising issues or like among the hot debates of the time. As an undergrad, I studied political science. So in my MA, I moved slightly to a kind of more a different field. Like it was one of the subfields in my department, the political theory, but still very much like kind of subfield which needs to be supported. So I was one of the students who were not liking the political science or political science and international relations, but like wishing to do more in political philosophy, political theory. So I persevered all those like years doing this like mainstream kind of political science. And at the end, applied to New School, which was like, before you apply, you try to know the department, but then you don't know exactly what you will be getting. But it's like in my experience, I find myself a little bit lucky, and like because I find myself in a place that like having benefited from my education in political science. So hopefully doing something that I can possibly dedicate my life to. So what I do, my research, in my PhD, I took, I think, another long detour through the disciplinary course of the department. I study on and with street animals, that brings my work at the intersection of political theory, urban studies and design, and social and political anthropology. So my work is on on the spaces of incarceration and detention for the animals, which you can think of all those like kill shelters and all those terrible and sad stories that the animals are caught up in. And I try to open up the questions of justice and law and legality, extra legality when it comes to our treatment, like contemporary urban treatments to animals that live in the city. I have completed 5 years of long field work So there's a fieldwork and ethnographic component of my research. I have completed in Istanbul, where we have like street animal detention and rehabilitation centers. And so having completed fieldwork, I'm now writing my dissertation. So as you see, I'm an international graduate student who has been through like different strengths and weaknesses of both myself and both of the like department's intellectual like venues, I can say. But like my major in political theory and my minor is global politics. So my like courses or like my major degree in political theory or the courses and the exam that prepared me to get the degree have helped me to develop the framework of my research, while the other courses that I've taken as a politics graduate students helped me to develop more the interdisciplinary part of my work. So politics department is a place that you can do this kind of critically oriented and politically oriented interdisciplinary work. We have 4, I guess, subfields. It's American politics, comparative politics, global politics, though there are like some like global politics and political theory. So I can, like when it comes to questions, I can try to address questions specific to the subfields. So there are like variety of classes in each of the offered as part of each of the subfields in the department. As a political theory major, I have taken several classes on like critiques of capitalism, readings of Marx, Foucault, like many of the contemporary interpretations of Marx, Hegel, or other like contemporary continental philosophy. And there are like many elective courses you can take, and there are many courses that politics graduate students can register as a cross-listed classes, so which are both offered under politics and philosophy, department of politics and sociology. So that's a very important opportunity as a student when you, even though when you start you don't know what your research project will be, those kind of possibilities help you to, I guess, help us to find our ways. That's what has happened to me. And even though I already hold a MA degree, I was, like the classes in the first years was very exciting and very, very inspiring to me. So I took many classes here at the New School, and that can be part of the experience that like you don't want to write your dissertation, you want to keep classes, but part of it is that there are like many of I could take class forever until my advisor like, okay, you are ready to start writing. So, but the fact that there are many classes you can take, so we can talk about it later.
Do you also feel haunted by the ghost of Hannah Arendt?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, my own dissertation haunts me like deeply. Just,
Zoe, can you tell us about yourself and about your department, sociology?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Zoe. I'm in fourth year PhD student in the Sociology Department, which means I am done with coursework and I am working on my exams, which in the Sociology Department are a little bit different. They're not oral exams. They're 2 what we call field statements. So you write these big papers. But anyway, so my research is about new technologies of surveillance, policing surveillance. And so I'm looking at new social network analysis in the form of social media surveillance into the mic. So social network analysis using social media, as well as kind of data-driven policing, what's often called predictive policing in critical spheres, though not by the police, and algorithmic decision-making. So one thing that I think is really important to note about the sociology department at the New School is that we are pretty much entirely qualitative. That's really, really unusual as far as American sociology is concerned, and it's something that our department feels very strongly about. We don't reduce people to numbers. We don't think that you can simply run a regression analysis and understand how poverty or inequality works, or measure culture or anything like that. We really do have a historical lens in all of the work that we do. We see people and society as coming about as kind of contingent in the result of where we've been. That being said, we do have a number of different kind of areas of specialization in the department. We have faculty that work on sociology of culture, inequality, economic sociology, political sociology. What else? Urban sociology, definitely. As far as our method, since we are qualitative, we really do kind of run the gamut from, we have a number of ethnographers, we have a lot of faculty who do in-depth qualitative interviews, historical methods, discourse analysis. We have regional specialization in Eastern Europe, in Middle East, Latin America, East Asia. Yeah, a little bit about our department, I guess. Anything else I can answer in questions or further discussion?
Okay. Could you just tell us, each one of you, in what ways do you work with faculty and students on your research, on your particular research? What is the nature of your collaboration with your colleagues, with your students, et cetera? Jay?
So like everything, it's complex. The first thing I do with my own PhD students is a trick I learned from a therapist friend. And she always waited for the analysand to come in and tell her what they thought therapy was about. And if they thought behavioral therapy was therapy, then she'd give them behavioral therapy. If they thought they wanted Freudianism, she'd become a Freudian analyst. And that's how the kind of supervisor I am. Some students think we have to meet weekly and talk weekly, and I meet weekly and talk weekly with them. Others kind of wave at me once a year and give me these huge chunks of writing. However, where the collaboration begins, in my case, is with students being my teaching assistants. I teach a large lecture course every year on aesthetics to undergraduates. And I have 6 TAs. And the TAs, and I write a long 5,000-word lecture for each lecture, send it out to the TAs, and then we meet every Monday afternoon at my home for 3 hours, and they critique my lecture, and we go over the reading, and we have that sense of being involved in a collaborative project. And that really is the most formative moment, right, where we figure out what collaborative work in both teaching and research involves. And those Monday afternoon sessions, I provide cookies, they bring their own drinks, but those sessions in my home are where the kind of social bonds are formed, both amongst the graduate students and with me. The other thought is simply the idea, which I've heard percolating, which I think is true of graduate work, is we're sharing a project. In my case, I've been working for, even though none of my own writing has been on this, for years I've been working on a certain reading of Hegel and teach these long, year-long courses on Hegel. And I have supervised just the most brilliant students doing dissertations on Hegel. One now teaching at the University of Oregon, another teaching at Vanderbilt, another who I've just spent 2 hours with preparing her interview for a job interview. So part of it is sharing a project and realizing, and it's the most important thing, that what research is about is really coming to participate in an ongoing conversation. And that's what I try to generate with my students and indicate, and they get the idea that research is itself the process of joining an ongoing conversation. So that's part of it. The other thing that goes on, and I think it's something about graduate work that's wildly, wildly different than undergraduate work. Graduate students is really not a continuation. It's something different. And the difference, it always seems to me, is this, that when I'm teaching someone Descartes in a graduate course, I know that the next time they're in a classroom thinking about Descartes, they're going to be the teacher and not the student. So graduate studies is taking responsibility for the discipline itself. And that's a kind of surprising process. And some people come in and want to be continual undergraduates. They just want to have the fun of reading and thinking. But being a graduate student really is different. And therefore, having this sense of the conversation and joining in a conversation is the thing that I try to make the center of my relations with my graduate students.
Okay, Mariana, would you like to talk about your collaborations with other students and with faculty and so forth?
Sure. Well, it depends on the stage of the research I'm in, but right now it's mostly independent work, and I just meet bi-weekly with my advisor to show him the work that I've been doing, to ask questions, to ask more references, and I mean, even though I have a main advisor, I also feel that my project is based on a collaboration with not just my advisor, but with other faculty members who have been very, I mean, they have always have time for students to, yeah, I mean, they have always have time for students and make sure that students are on the right path in the department. So, I mean, I have felt very supported by each one of them. Each one of them has provided, or even if I need a new pair of eyes to look at my work, and that I mean, my advisor sometimes maybe. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I just need a new pair of eyes, and the faculty, other faculty members have been very very welcoming and supportive of my work. So that's why I think my project is also a collaboration between all of them, and also, of course, students. Right. I mean, it depends on cohorts, but usually our cohort, we meet every month, maybe, and we share ideas. We have a study group, we have a reading group, And yeah, so even with students, I find that there's a lot of collaboration.
And do you find the atmosphere in the department is more collegial and, say, cutthroat, or?
Than competitive? Or what?
So, yes.
Yeah, definitely. I felt it's more.
Okay, and you can be completely frank about it. So, yeah, so, even though we're on Facebook. Okay, Clint, how about?
Yeah.
I know that you have a lot of opportunities for collaboration. So.
Yeah, so hearing Jay speak sounded very familiar to me. I was getting like warm and fuzzy feeling because it reminded me of, how I built a relationship with my advisor and how that relationship continues to develop. So I guess there's a lot to talk about. I mean, working with my primary advisor has been a really rewarding process. He's very, I would say, hands-off. So it's kind of like, if I wanted to, it would be just waving at him in the hall once a year, and he'd be fine with that. As long as I'm doing work, that's totally all right. But he's also completely available. So this semester I'm teaching a class, an undergrad class, and I said I'd really like to meet with you before my seminar each week just to go over some ideas. And he teases me and says, "You're too conscientious," but he's like, "Of course, I'll talk to you about that." And that's been really helpful as I prepare each week's class. We also hold weekly lab meetings. So I meet with my lab every week, and we talk about our research, which is all related to memory. And then
Do you want to say something just briefly about the lab system in the department?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So each faculty member has a research lab, clinical or CSD. They're all going to have their own research lab. They're going to vary in the research they do and the type of work that students can expect. MA students on the clinical side of things do more of what I call grunt work. They have to go in and kind of put in those hours and code data that's already been collected and so on and so forth. Whereas for me, I went in and kind of like pitched a project during the MA, and my advisor was like, "Yeah, it sounds cool," and that was it. And then he's like out the door and go do that. So it varies quite a bit from advisor to advisor. But yeah, each faculty is going to have a research lab. Your students are going to feel compelled to join a research lab during the MA, and if they're planning on continuing on to a PhD, whether it's here or elsewhere, they should try to join a research lab. They're going to get really valuable experience out of that and build connections with faculty who can help them, whether they're applying here or elsewhere. With that said, we mentioned like the competitive nature. There is a bit of a competitive nature to the MA program because there are 60 to 70 students, most of whom are clinical, and there's 15 to 16 PhD clinical slots per year. So particularly among the clinical students, which I was kind of on the periphery of, but even I could feel it, there is a sense of competition in the MA. That's definitely my least favorite part of the MA program. And it's not like it was explicit. It wasn't in your face, but you could feel it. You're competing with your classmates, and that's unfortunate, but kind of emulates the entire field of graduate studies because it is a competitive field. So that's one aspect, but then getting back to the research labs, I'm involved in multiple research labs now, and they're great. We meet once a week, so I have like 3 meetings each week. And it's a great place to take research, and I can pitch my own ideas and get them critiqued, or other students pitch their ideas, which I can critique and then get ideas from them. And I mean, every lab essentially holds these meetings once per week. I've also been involved in a project on studying memory in jury deliberations, and we've been collaborating with faculty at John Jay and students at John Jay. So that's been a very large collaborative project where I've got to learn how collaboration on a grander scale works. Oftentimes
Just to specify, it's John Jay College of Criminal Justice and
yes,
part of the CUNY system.
Yeah, part of CUNY, yeah. And yeah, that's been that's been a learning experience as well. I find myself, at times, I've gone to my advisor and been like, what's my role in all of this? Like, am I okay? And he's like, you're okay. Like, you're all right now. Things are moving here, and then like it's gonna come back, and then you're gonna have work to do. So that's been beneficial as well. I suppose that's it. I mean, I collaborate with other students as well in the research labs, but also on projects. And this is, at least in my lab, because my advisor's kind of hands-off, if you want to collaborate with another student, you do, and if you don't, you don't. So a lot of my projects turn out to be independent because my lab mates aren't like interested in the same ideas or whatever, but then if we find some common ground, and it's like, all right, let's put our minds together here. And then of course we are always trying to acquire undergrad research assistants, which is extremely helpful when you can snag one of those. But, yeah.
To do the grunt work.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mina, you want to speak about collaboration in politics?
Yeah, it's so on my own research, I was lucky on the advisor front. So in politics department, you spend quite a good amount of time taking classes, which helps you to, this doesn't have to be this way, but it's often helpful and for you to decide on your research project and to get to know how to do it. So you take classes, so during that time, while taking classes, you get to know the professors and their research interests, you get to have the chance to involve and interact with their work. I think that's what happened in my case, because my work, as I mentioned, is interdisciplinary and has to bring in different strands of thought, different traditions of thought. My committee that reflects on my dissertation committee, so I have worked with with professors, besides my primary advisor, I've been in touch, worked with, and having done research with other faculty, both at the politics department and across the New School. So that's something you can do as a politics graduate student. But I think so that's being the student part of the whole story. But then, in my second year, I started working as a research assistant for my own advisor, which was quite an important moment in my experience, because then I get to know more about how the professors just represent their research, do their research, and share with the students how a graduate course is being prepared, how a graduate undergraduate course is being prepared. So all those syllabus preparation process, you see how that relies upon long years of work, and how so I was very I find myself a bit lucky to be witness and to be part of that project. So before the semester begins, we talk long hours of discussions and co-working with my advisor. And I was research assistant for two different professors. One was my advisor. The other one is luckily my committee, though he's not part of the New School now. So you do this kind of work. In my third year, I start working as a TA. So that's the moment that I think that was very that was the game changer for me at the New School, because. Then I get to know the undergrads at the New School, so that gave me doing the teaching assistantship, being a teaching assistant for different undergrads, undergrads from different departments at the New School. So I was TAing for ULEC classes that fit to my research interests. So I get to, for example, study and work with students at Lang, from Milano, from public engagement, from Parsons, which is the students from urban design, fashion design, and design studies. I was you could imagine how I was feeling very anxious and all the time feeling very powerless, and because you are not coming from, I wasn't coming from a design or fashion, for example, background, then that gave me the opportunity to bring in different and more innovative lines of thought, questions of the day, which are to bring in some intellectual bridges, and because the graduate work can be, I find myself sometimes getting lost in that long tunnel without knowing if there's any light at the end, so it's that kind of feeling, and it's true, it's very pressing, it's very challenging and difficult process. even though your advisor is there to help you, which is a great thing, you feel yourself lonely, like all those lives in New York in a small room writing the dissertation. So it's a depressing experience, but it's very good, like to come out of that room, out of your like self-righteous dissertation thing, but then go meet with new school students, undergrad, and they are really brilliant students. So teaching them was I think, when I was feeling that I'm part of an institution and I'm collaborating with students and I'm learning with them. So I share with them, like in every class I teach, I share with them, like first week, my own work, and like get responses throughout the semester, which is great. And I teach them how I share my experience of how to like designing a research, and they learning from their own experience. So this is a very teaching at the New School, it's really great, and that's how my collaboration. And collaboration with colleagues, I never felt, I know that like the politics department is a bit competitive, but it's more like kind of this can be the true for New School, I guess. It's kind of not, for example, not in terms of like career-wise competition or like just grades, but more like intellectual competition. And there's many jokes you will hear around the New School, especially in politics and philosophy departments, that like, so I study on Marx, my dissertation is on Hegel, so that kind of competition. So like the stakes are a little bit high, especially in the first years of PhD, but then the stakes get, I think, lower and become as you are much into the work. So, and there are many venues that students come together and collaborate and discuss their work, which is great. They are like partly, and one thing I want to mention is the independent studies that you do with a faculty member as a course. So which is like you design, and you with the professor design the whole design the semester. So those are like good opportunities for you to work closely with a professor, and B, to start doing your own research. So, and second thing is just with your cohort or with the other students, there are many values, like there are many collectives. For example, we have political theory collective, American politics or competitive people have their own thing, and you come together in a like, it's a very systematic and like planned work. You come together, respond to each other's work, and you learn. I learn a lot from my own friends. And one thing is that there's not a cohort system in the department. So in my first semester in the PhD, I was the only one. In all the classes, I was the only first year PhD students, which feels sometimes, I admit that a little bit intimidating, but it was at the end very great too, because I learned from the other friends in the second year, third years. Then there are like any other first year graduate students, but I learned from them as much as I learned from the professors and the lecturers. So yeah.
Okay, Zoe, you want to just tell us about collaboration in sociology?
Sure. So I guess in my own experience, I did the master's at New School first, and one thing that I would really recommend if you're interested in taking a master's here, is to take research methods courses, because you get to kind of develop your own project and work closely with a faculty member all the way through, designing the research project, conducting the research, analyzing it, writing something up at the end. And it's a great opportunity to have that kind of close engagement with a faculty member on a project you're interested in. And also, if you decide that you want to apply to a different PhD program afterwards, you can develop one of those papers into a writing sample or into a proposal. It's a great opportunity at the master's level. At the PhD level, I've been very lucky to, this year especially, I've started a new fellowship program at the New School, which provides 2 years of funding, which we haven't discussed yet, but funding is difficult at the New School, and so this is a great opportunity. I'm working with my my advisor, and it's interdisciplinary and kind of brings together Parsons and the schools of public engagement, kind of the research methods that they use there with kind of our social theory. As far as kind of peer-to-peer collaboration, there are tons of opportunities. Even the department makes funds available for students to start a reading group or have a semester-long workshop to kind of work through, if everyone's maybe at the same level, they're all working on field statements or they're working on dissertation proposals. They can get together and maybe once a week somebody will present their work and you can discuss it, comment on it. The feedback from the students is invaluable, especially because, it's one thing to get your professor's perspective, but to get your peers who have read completely different material is really, really beneficial. Also, just to mention again, at the master's level, the university makes funding available for master's level students who want to come together and form groups, whether it's, I know psychology just hosted a seminar bringing in social justice research kind of in the field of psychology. They were able to invite a bunch of scholars to come in. In our department, actually, I think it was a collaboration between sociology and anthropology. They've been working on a reading group on kind of decolonial, post-colonial theory, because it's something they felt was missing from kind of the canon that's taught in our core courses. Last year, there was a group that came together that would have regular presentations and discussions on the social significance of art. So there are lots of opportunities to collaborate with faculty and with your peers at both the master's and PhD level.
Okay. We're actually at the end of the time for the panel discussion, but I want to, do you have time to stay for the one last question, everyone? Okay, so the last question I'm going to pose to the panel is, what makes NSSR distinctive and noteworthy in the graduate school landscape? Jay?
Great. So as I kind of indicated earlier, in terms of philosophy, it's the way in which we combine continental philosophy and political philosophy and are interested in contemporary events. Some way of posting that is my colleague Simon Critchley edits the Stone column for the New York Times, and the project of that was to say that there should be a public face and a public engagement to philosophy. And on the whole, the philosophy department, although it has, again, its commitment to the history of philosophy, is each of us feels compelled to be looking at contemporary issues and contemporary problems. My colleague, Alice Crary, is working on animal rights. Professor Critchley, of course, has contributed to current discussions widely. There's just that sense that philosophy has to be part of a contemporary conversation. Maybe put it this way, that we don't think of philosophy as a narrow academic discipline. We think of philosophy as a part of wider culture. And the question is, for us, is how does philosophy live up to that thought? And I think you'll find that most everywhere else, literally, philosophy is an academic discipline. And that seems to us part of a good reason to ignore it. And that's why the humanities are in trouble generally, if you think that they're just academic disciplines. And to think of the meaning of a discipline in a wider culture, which is what we all do, is why we connect to aesthetics, connect to politics, connect to contemporary issues, is to try to address that problem and issue of the present.
Do you want to also mention, I'm surprised you haven't brought this up already because you're so involved with it, but the psychoanalytic track in there? This is something I think is unique to this department, isn't it?
It is absolutely unique to the department. Something that had existed before I got here, it disappeared, and I brought back to the department. So we have a track in the MA program where you can do a philosophy and psychoanalytic track, and part of the reason for that is that licensing for therapy in New York State now requires people to have an MA in any discipline. It's an odd requirement, but we wanted to generate an MA that would be attractive to people who were thinking of going into therapy, and some of the students who run through the track, that is where they want to go. And Alan Bass, who is a practicing analyst, also, of course, translator of Derrida, and an interesting psychoanalytic theorist, teaches a course for us every semester. And again, a whole bunch of us, including Dick Bernstein, who's written on Freud, I've written on Freud, Simon Critchley has written on Lacan. So we are invested in, again, the conversation with psychoanalysis as a humane discipline.
Great. Mariana, would you like to tell us what makes NSSR distinctive in your eyes?
Sure. Well, I think I already mentioned this more or less. I think something noteworthy about our department is the attention professors provide to their students, and the sometimes caring environment they foster. We are a very small department, so that that makes it easier. For instance, I have heard in other graduate institutes that professors don't have time to meet with their students enough. They don't have time to provide enough attention to their advocacies. I have felt that in this department, even though faculty members are very, very busy, they always make sure to check how you're doing and how's your research going. And students that they detect are being left behind, they they work with that particular student more. So, I mean, that tells you about the caring environment it can be. Also, other thing that I have noticed from other graduate departments is faculty members try to impose ideas on students, on the students' research, or try to align students' research for their own benefit or on their own interest. And I don't think that is the case in this department. I think faculty members provide a lot of freedom to students' ideas. And they work towards what the student wants and how the student wants to develop their project. So I think that's something worth mentioning.
Clinton, what makes the NSSR unique in your eyes?
Well, so for NSSR as a whole, or really the new school as a whole, I suppose it's the progressive nature of the student body and faculty for me, which I found refreshing, but I came here from rural Ohio, so it was quite a change, quite eye-opening. As I said, I found it refreshing, but it was like, wow, this is extreme at first, quite a change for the good. And then for the psychology department, something I hear reflected by other students as well is just the faculty. Consistently impressed with our faculty. I've had really positive experiences with the faculty I've worked with. And we have kind of a diverse set of faculty as far as research interests go. A set of interests that I haven't really seen in other departments. And I remember when I finished the MA, I applied elsewhere and interviewed at other universities, and I found I don't know whether it's a good thing or, you could see it as a positive or a negative, because here I think each faculty member is kind of researching something unique, distinct from the other faculty members. There's few faculty who really focus on very similar ideas. Whereas at other universities, you tend to see like groups of faculty, like there's a group of people studying this particular topic, and less of that diversity. Which again, you could see that as positive or negative. I view it as positive because I get a really diverse set of ideas when I take my interest to lab meetings and so on and so forth. And the classes give me a diverse set of ideas as well. So I think that's what I would have to say.
Mina, can you give us a few comments from your perspective on that?
I think, yeah, I agree. It's the progressive nature. Like, as a graduate student, both for MA and PhD student, you can feel it and you can learn from. Like, the general atmosphere at the NSSR is like being theoretically informed and politically engaged. The balance is never skewed to either part. So it's very important. Like, so beyond, especially like in politics or political science, you can end up with like discussing, I mean, these are great works, but like you can end up discussing, for example, voting behavior in a social context without getting to discuss any kind of background ideas and like philosophical thought or theoretical background. Just an example, I just think of like without, like social science can be very derivative, very like even superficial when you do not go back into the background ideas that are organizing, motivating, or just kind of disciplining the discipline itself. So it's very important. I think it's a great opportunity and very unique to NSSR that you can cultivate your ideas and like learn more about like other people. And this is serious. This is not like learning from other, like just learning from peers, taking like different classes. This is very institutionally organized, like consciously supported opportunity that you come to a department as a student, as a MA or PhD student, then you get the chance to learn from other disciplines, like, for example, someone in political theory, and this political theory is a strong suit in the politics department, so I think I was lucky in that sense. Like, so that is like history of political thought, or like history of political philosophy, or philosophy classes. It's just for a theory student is invaluable, like to not to end up with like shallow, more ideological, political like constructs at the end. So I think that's very unique to NSSR. So yeah.
And Zoe, can you give us your perspective as well?
Sure. I would say also, in addition to kind of the interdisciplinary nature that's of so many of the departments, working across disciplines is really important, but kind of the public face of a lot of the scholarship, I think at the university in general, also in the Sociology Department, whether it's trying to kind of make your work, your research, ongoing research available to the public as you're still kind of working out the ideas through something like public seminar, or simply engaging really pressing issues that will matter. I think that's also one of the really important kind of factors about NSSR to remember. And just, I mean, we're a very international group here, but I think that's one of the incredible strengths of the university, from the faculty to the students. You learn so much more when everyone is engaged and informed from various backgrounds and brings that information to this, a hub like New York that's already also a very, international and diverse place.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for our panel? Anyone like to pose a question to our panel? Don't be shy. You've got something. If not, I'd like to thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. And we'll be going on now to talk about, yes. Okay. Maybe you can speak into the microphone.
So I have two questions about the program. You mentioned cognitive science-based psychology and clinical psychology, but I was also wondering if there's any humanist or social psychology aspect of it or psychoanalytic aspect of how much are there? And also, how is important not having psychology background at all in the selection committee? So these are my quick questions for you. And Professor Bernstein, I'm here to learn about the psychology program. As I heard you mentioning May in the psychoanalytic track, I'm now a little being swayed in my interest, so I like to learn. So my primary interest is actually psychoanalysis, and I have a little bit of little different background here. So how much is there any clinical work involved in the MA in psychoanalytic track? And also, is it possible that sort of, you said external candidate cannot be accepted for PhD program here, but I wonder if you do MA in, for example, psychoanalytic training in the philosophy department, apply for PhD in psychology program. Is there any protocol in that? Okay, thank you.
So to speak from the psychology department, there's certainly emphasis on social psychology in a few of the labs, and there is a psychodynamic focus in a few of the clinical labs. So you can look at the Howard and Miriam Steele are studying attachment theory, and Jeremy Saffron is doing psychodynamic therapy. I'm not as familiar with their work personally, since I'm not on the clinical side, but they do focus on those theories, and I would definitely recommend looking into their work, particularly Jeremy Saffron. With that said, I'm not as familiar with the psychoanalysis track in the philosophy department. I don't know of any psychology students who do the full-on psychoanalytic track. I'm sure you could find a way to bridge that gap and do some courses on that track. I don't know if you could do all of them because the psychology department is very specific about how many credits you take in the psychology MA in order to enter the PhD. So it would be kind of up to the department, which, if you really talk to people in the department and work through it, then, you could, I'm sure they'd be somewhat flexible. I can't guarantee how flexible, but, keep yelling at people and they kind of listen. So, yeah. Was there another question for me, or is it? Yeah.
So I can answer another question that you asked him, though, is that you can't really do an MA in philosophy and psychoanalysis and apply to the PhD internally in psychology. That won't wash, and it doesn't wash the other way either. The MAs here are all actually very intensive. And they're intensive for the reason I explained earlier. You're taking responsibility for a discipline. You're really undergoing a kind of not learning, but a kind of training into a form of life. And hence the MA, why the MAs are the feeders they are. The other side is while the psychologists all do have labs of various kind. There's no clinical work involved in the psychoanalytic track in philosophy.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I have two questions for Clinton. One is that could you elaborate more on the process of applying to the PhD clinical program once you're in the MA program? Is it easier, or is it the same, like you have to apply externally? The second question is, what kind of funds are available for master's graduate students, especially for international or minority students?
I will be addressing the financial questions later.
Yeah, so the application process for the PhD is different than the MA. But, I mean, you submit kind of some similar materials, but it's all internal. You don't like go through the admissions department at all, so you submit it just to the department. It involves a statement of interest, a writing sample, CV, recommendation letters. They have other things on file, like your transcripts already, and GRE scores and things like that are already on file. So you don't have to resubmit that stuff. And then it's reviewed just by the faculty. The faculty know students by this point. So, you know, a lot of times, I mean, your performance matters. You need to have a 3.7 GPA to get into the PhD. You know, you have to be on the research track to get into the PhD, so you have to have already applied to be on the research track during your first year of the MA, completed an independent but faculty-sponsored research project and MA thesis. You don't have to complete it by the time you apply, but you have to show decent progress on it by the time you apply, because you apply at the beginning of your last semester of the MA. But then ultimately, you know, like your faculty relationships are going to play a huge role in that, because if you already did this research project, you already know a faculty member that you want to work with at the PhD level. So while they're going to discuss the different students, it's really going to come down to, like, does your faculty member want to, your primary advisor want to work with you, continue to work with you at the PhD level. And they're also going to argue with each other about funding, which funding is unfortunately limited. I think PhD students all get at least 50% tuition coverage, but there's only 2 fellowships per department, and there's
It will depend from year to year, Allison.
Yeah, there's 2 for CSD and 2 for clinical, for the full fellowships. And then there's, you know, all PhD students are essentially doing like TA work and RA work and things like that, and you get paid per semester on that. It doesn't go straight into your tuition or anything like that.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, once again, I want to thank our panel. And if you'd like to stay, I'm going to be going on with a little bit about the admissions process and about things like funding. If the panel would like to stay, they're welcome to do so. If you have to go, we once again thank you very much for your attendance. So just again to speak about the New School for Social Research as an entity, as I mentioned, it began as the University of Exile in 1933. And by the way, did I introduce myself? My name is Henry Watkin. I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions for the New School, one of the Associate Directors. And I work primarily with the New School for Social Research on the admissions side of things. As I mentioned before, the New School for Social Research began as the University in Exile, changed its name to the Graduate Faculty of Political and Social Science, and now is the New School for Social Research. It features MA and PhD programs. Master's programs, Master of Arts programs are 30 credits. That's basically 2 years of study. There is a Master of Science program in the Economics Department, which is 45 credits, which would be 5 semesters or more. And then there are PhD programs. The MAs are the first part of the PhD programs. You earn 30 credits at the MA level, and an additional 30 credits is required for PhD as part of the PhD requirements. So there's 60 credits in all for the PhD, except in clinical psychology, which is 90 credits as mandated by the American Psychological Association. Okay. These are the departments that we have. The first 6 of these are MA PhD programs. Anthropology, as mentioned before, solely cultural anthropology. Economics, the economics department is one of the few heterodox economics departments in the country, by which I mean that unlike, say, the University of Chicago, they do not take rational choice as the only determinant, so-called rational choice is the only determinant of economic behavior. They offer MA, MS, and PhD. The philosophy department, as Professor Bernstein mentioned, is a continental philosophy department. And you heard about politics and psychology and sociology. Historical studies is an MA program only. It is a combination of historical research and social science theory and methodology. It deals with the recent past, the last 200 years or so. It tends to look at large questions rather than national histories, things like the history of capitalism, history of slavery, things like that. You can go on to the MA, to the PhD from the historical studies program in sociology or politics. There is a mechanism for doing that. You have to, of course, fulfill MA requirements for those departments while you're doing your MA in historical studies. And liberal studies is our create your own curriculum program. It is, again, on MA program only. It is built around a thesis of the student's own choosing. There are 2 mandatory courses, but other than that, you can take electives from any of the programs, any of the departments of the New School for Social Research, and even the wider university community. The Creative Publishing and Critical Journalism MA is our newest program. It prepares students it trains students in the new methods of doing journalism. It's mainly with new media, but all kinds of journalism are incorporated within its boundaries. It's a very hands-on kind of thing, and also kind of program, and it also has a networking aspect to it. And then there is the Certificate in Gender and Sexuality. This is a 4-course certificate program that students in any of the departments of the New School for Social Research, and in fact, any of the master's programs or PhD programs throughout the university can do. And there's a latitude for doing different topics within that certificate program, but it's something you can you can earn as an adjunct to your MA program. Okay, the other thing that I hope that you learn from our panel is that what makes the New School for Social Research distinctive is its world-class faculty. You study with leaders in the social sciences, liberal arts, policy, etc. To name just a few of the outstanding faculty that we have at the New School for Social Research, Teresa Ghilarducci is a leading expert. She is the professor of economics, a leading expert on the pension and the retirement crisis. Her recommendations for pension reform were adopted by the state of California. Rachel Sherman in sociology is a pioneer in the study of the elite. She just published a book which has attracted a lot of attention. She interviewed a good number of families in New York City who are in the upper 1% of the economic bracket, and try to get an idea of how they feel about their money and how they feel about the rest of society. We heard a little bit about Bill Hurst already. That's Clint's advisor. Cutting edge research and collective memory. In historical studies, Federico Finkelstein again has been writing in the popular press and of course in scholarly venues on populism and fascism. And in Rachel Rosenfeld in creative publishing and critical journalism, she is an expert on the publishing in the new age of media. All of these scholars produce high quality research of great social relevance. Okay, so the admissions process. These are the topics that we will be covering: the online application, transcripts, test scores, your statement of purpose, the academic writing sample, the resume or CV, recommendations, deadlines, and how to finance your education. Okay, so we have an online application. There's a $50 application fee. If any of you are interested, we are pretty liberal about waiving that fee. So if you want to contact me, we can talk about that. The online application is available on the program website. almost all your materials can be submitted online. You can do this practically all online. The materials that you submit, obviously you upload yourself or you complete yourself online. Official test scores are sent from testing agencies directly to us. We use, for review purposes, we use unofficial transcripts, so you can upload copies of the transcripts that you have already in your possession. You don't have to do this all at once. You can do this in stages. And I don't think anyone's in this category, but people who want to be who need to be readmitted, or who are non-degree students or visiting students, who want to be non-degree students or visiting students, you can contact the admissions office for more information on the process. Okay, so transcripts. As I mentioned already, for review purposes, we are asking only for unofficial transcripts, or mark sheets, if that's what they're called for you. We ask you to scan them and upload them. We want you to scan both the grades part and the back of the transcripts, where they talk about what the grades, what the grading system is. We want transcripts from all post-secondary institutions that you attended. Now, we're mainly interested in where you got your degree or degrees, but even if you only took a few courses at another place, we'd want to see those courses, those transcripts as well. If your transcript is not in English, we do need a certified translation of that transcript. That is to say, a translation made by a certified translation agency. We do not accept self-translated transcripts. If you have a study abroad experience, if you've done a study abroad experience, you can omit that study abroad experience from your list of post-secondary schools that you attended. If your home university's transcript has the grades, the courses and the grades you took already. So if your home university transcript already shows your study abroad program, don't put that down as a separate institution attended. Just let it be reflected on the home university transcript. If you are admitted and you decide to attend, we will ask for official transcripts. That is defined as transcripts that are sent to us directly from the institution, not through your agency. If you have a copy that is sealed by the university already, we will accept that as well. But in general, we would want it to be sent to us directly from the institution. International students often ask about whether or not they need to have an official evaluation of their transcript done. Actually, our admissions staff is, since we've seen so many applications from international students and international applicants, we're pretty familiar with the systems around the world. You do not need to go to one of the evaluation agencies to have your transcript evaluated. The only time that we might ask for that is if you are transferring credits. If you want to transfer credit, then we might ask for an evaluation from one of the agencies approved by the National Association of Credential Evaluation Services. And to get a list of those, go to naces.com, NACES.com, or .org rather, and you will find the acceptable evaluation agencies. Okay. GREs, this is one of the scary things for many people. New School for Social Research requires the graduate record examination only from people who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents who received their bachelor's degree within the last 5 years, and the 5 years immediately preceding the application. So at this point, if you got your bachelor's degree in 2012 or 2013 almost, or earlier, you will not need to submit a GRE score. Likewise, if you are not a citizen of the United States or not a permanent resident, you do not need to send us GRE scores. If you are in the exempt category and you've taken the GREs, you can submit them still. And you might do so, especially if your undergraduate grades were not what you hoped they would be, or if you are moving from one field to another. If you just did a really great job on the GREs, you can send us the GREs. Let me explain to you how we use them. They are not used either to admit anyone or to eliminate anyone in themselves. They're mainly used as a check against the GPA, against your grade point average. If both of them are on the same level, that's fine. If one is high and the other is low, the admissions committee will ask itself some questions. Do you have a question, sir?
Yeah. So I have my bachelor's degree within 5 years.
Uh-huh.
I also already have a master's degree in a different subject. If I was interested in studying at the new school, would I still have to take the GRE? Because I never did take it.
Well, the requirement would still apply to you. Were you thinking of applying to another master's program, or?
Yeah.
Okay. What you should do is, and I'll give you my card later, and my card is available for all of you, by the way. You can, if you apply, you can email me, and we can discuss it. Okay. All right. Any other questions on that point, or anything else I've said so far? Okay. How many international? Yes. How many international students do we have? International people do we have? People who are not, whose native language is not English. Okay. Well, we require a proof of English language proficiency from anyone whose native language is not English. We test that through the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the PTE. Our minimum scores for those are, as you see, 100 for TOEFL, 7.0 for IELTS, Pearson 68. However, if your first language is English, you do not, obviously don't have, even if you're an international, you don't have to take any of these tests. And those who attended a 4-year institution where English is the primary language of instruction are also exempt from the proof of English language requirement. Yes?
I used to be an international student, but I have graduate studies here in the US.
Okay.
And also I'm a Western, so
All right. Did you study for 4 years at a place?
4 years.
Okay. Well, again, we can discuss that. All right. Okay. The statement of purpose is an admission essay. It really tells us about you and about how you fit with the program. You should discuss your academic goals, your life goals, and how the program will help you meet the goals you've set for yourself. You should also show that you are familiar with the program that you're applying to by mentioning professors who you think will be particularly helpful in meeting your goals, and courses that are particularly interesting to you. And if you have special honors that you think are applicable, or if there are things in your record that need to be explained, you can spend a short paragraph talking about that. The academic writing sample, yes?
Can you talk about the approximate length of that?
Okay, that should be 500 to 750 words, 2 to 3 double-spaced typewritten pages at most. Please do not go on longer than that. I mean, not that we're counting words, but the admissions committee has only a certain amount of time to read each application, and so if you go on for pages and pages, they may just put it aside. Furthermore, as part of the test here, can you say things in a concise and clear way? So keep that in mind, okay? The academic writing sample. You will be asked to submit an academic writing sample. This is a very important part of the application. This is where the admissions committee gets a chance to look into your mind and see how you think. It has to be an academic style paper, not creative writing, not a memoir, or anything like that. It should be, for the master's programs, 10 to 20 pages. It should indicate that you have the ability to ask cogent questions and to respond to them in a methodical way. It should show that you are familiar with the conventions of academic writing, citation, attribution, bibliography, margins, things like that. If you are applying to the Creative Publishing and Critical Journalism program, instead of an academic paper, you can submit journalistic pieces that you published or blog entries that you created for yourself. If you're applying directly to a PhD, one of the PhD programs, which you can do in all the 6 programs except, as was mentioned before, anthropology and psychology, we need a longer, more substantial writing sample, one that shows that you have mastered one part of the field, that you know the questions that are being asked, you know the bibliography, you know the debates and so forth. We ask for a standard resume. Yes?
For example, if one applies to the field of psychology
Uh-huh.
and one's academic paper is in another field
Mm-hmm.
outside of psychology, would that be allowable?
We want you to get as close as you can to psychology, but if you just don't have anything that's psychology, yes, you can submit something that's outside the field. And I should mention also that the paper that you submit does not have to have been a graded paper from a term, from another course. You can write one specifically for the purposes of this application. That's particularly true for anyone who might be coming to us after a few years out of school and feels that they don't have the papers anymore. Their papers don't reflect their current abilities and things like that. Okay, so just a few more slides here. Resume, standard business resume, giving your education, professional experience, activities, and so forth. Include any program relevant projects. Do not put your picture on there. It's something actually pretty standard in Europe, but in America we don't really want you to show us what you look like until you get here. And please do include all contact information, including your mailing address, your physical address, your any other email addresses you might use other than the one you used particularly for the program, phone numbers, and so forth. We ask for 2 recommendations. Recommendations can be from any party, and it's really more about what they say than who wrote them. They should talk about how you work with ideas and theory and what would make you a good candidate for this program, for the program that you're applying for. Generally, it is people who have taught you in a classroom situation that give us the best information on these topics, but we, again, will take recommendations from any recommendation provider. Work supervisors can usually tell us this person was punctual and took initiative and so forth, and that's not unimportant, but it doesn't give us everything we want to know. The only people I would really advise you to stay away from would be personal friends, relatives, people who've known you since you were 3 years old, that sort of thing. That doesn't really give us much help. Deadlines, we are still accepting, yes?
I have more than 2 recommendation letters.
2 recommendation letters we asked for.
More than 2.
More than 2. Okay, we will actually accept a 3rd, not a 4th. 3 at most. But again, keep in mind, the admissions committees have limited time to read each application. So if you load them down with too much, they're going to get upset, and they might not rate you as high as they might otherwise. We're still accepting applications for the spring. For people who are not U.S. citizens, it might be a little too late, although we will work with you. We might be able to waive some requirements at this point for like a second recommendation or things like that. And we can assist you with special issues, but please, if you're going to apply for the spring, please do so as soon as possible. The deadlines for the fall. January 5th is our priority deadline for consideration for full funding. Some of those full funding scholarships, fellowships actually bear a stipend, but they are very few in number, and statistically speaking, the chances of getting one are small. But if you want to be considered, please apply no later than January 5th, complete your application by January 5th. And if you're not chosen for full funding, you're automatically considered for partial funding, which ranges from 10% to 75% of tuition. These are all merit-based scholarships. We do not have any need-based scholarships at all. And about 80% of applicants in the last cycle did receive a scholarship offer. So the chance of getting one of the partial scholarships is quite high, actually. The average award being about 40% last time. The other advantage of applying by the priority deadline is that you will receive your decision in the first round of letters that go out, which will be around early March. After January 5th, we will still accept applications. Partial funding scholarships only will be available, however. There will be no more full funding scholarships. And decisions will be on a rolling basis. If you are an international student, again, please apply no later than January 15th to give yourself enough time to apply for a visa if you are admitted. And August 1st is really sort of the drop-dead date. Again, we have taken applications after that date, but we cannot guarantee they'll be processed in time. The orientation is going to be the third week of August, so it doesn't give us much time. Yes?
If one hopes to receive partial funding,
Yes.
will there be a distinction made between applications that are received before January 5th and those that are received after?
I used to be able to say yes, but at this point, we're pretty much consistent, which is not a reason to delay, by the way. It's to your advantage to know what you're going to be doing. So get your application in as soon as it's feasible. Financing your education, the main ways are through departmental scholarships, external scholarships, and we do have an external funding page which can help you find sources of support even now. Employment, both on campus and off campus, and of course student loans, which is something people will reasonably want to avoid to the extent possible, but they are there to help you as well. Financing your education, be active. I don't like the word proactive at all, but be active. Seek scholarships and financial aid wherever you can. Do fill out, if you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, fill out the FAFSA so that you will be eligible for those loans and other forms of aid. Find out the cost of attendance before you get too deeply into this. Find out what it's actually going to cost you. And of course, you can figure in later what kinds of aid you have, but know what the sticker price is, as they call it. Meet all deadlines that you can, and if you're an international student, look into what your government has to offer for study abroad. Okay, any questions now about the admissions process or anything else that's been done? Okay. Again, I have my card up here if you'd like to contact me with any questions. We really want to hear from you again, and thank you all for attending.